I ain't give has something to provide. So think about what that value is for her. So I want us to, again, the last slide that I showed you was a quote where Levy talks about the brutal torture and murder that happened to him, the trauma that happened to him as a kid. At the end of scene 1, he talks about this moment that happens to him. And taking that into consideration, I want us to think about this moment here, okay? Thinking about Levy's traumatic past. It don't matter what you're talking about. I ain't no imitation white man. And I don't want to be no white man. As soon as I get my band together and make them records like Mr. Sturdivant done told me I can make, I'm gonna be like Ma and tell the white man just what he can do. Ma tell Mr. Irvin she gonna leave, and Mr. Irvin get down on his knees and beg her to stay. That's the way I'm gonna be. Make the white man respect me. The white man don't care nothing about Ma. The color folks made Ma a star. White folks don't care nothing about who she is. What kind of music she make? That's the truth about that. You let her go down to one of them white folks hotels and see how big she is. This is an incredible sort of back and forth that gives us some important insight into this play's examination and exploration of power and freedom, right? The recording studio, Ma has a certain level of power and a certain level of freedom, but there's limitations, there's social restrictions placed upon that make her power and the freedom that comes with that very limited, very temporary, so to speak. But Levy is so focused on the things that he doesn't have, that he doesn't acknowledge or understand what Ma doesn't have, and what won't be possible even if Levy is able to attain some of the success that Ma has. Let's keep going. Before I go on, I did not include this. Actually, let me rewind slightly. I think there's a variety of ways to take the BB King song, "The Thrill Is Gone," and connect it and use it to explore this song, this display. I think that this moment right here is sort of one of those moments, right? The thrill is gone, you done me wrong, right? I'm free from your spell, right? I think there's a way to look at that song and consider like the thrill being gone reflects Ma and her feelings about making music, right? And one of those moments, and again, I don't have it here, you guys can write it, but there's this hesitancy for her to sign her name, right? There's this reluctance to sign her name because she knows as soon as she signs her name, she turns over those songs to them, and she doesn't have them anymore. She's losing some of her power. I'm free from your spell, though. The thrill is gone. And if we think about Levy, the other thing that I brought up before is the Robert Johnson, right? Crossroads, where he tells the story of, a guitar player selling his soul to be really good, to be able to play the guitar really well. And we have this idea that, Levy brings that up, right? Levy brings up this idea that he would happily sell his soul. Like he does, and he's not worried about the repercussions of him saying that because he does not believe in God because of everything that he has witnessed, everything he has witnessed. But if you remember the Robert Johnson story, he sells his soul, meaning he sacrifices everything he can for a little bit of fame, but it ends poorly. It ends badly, right? So what I want you to think about is what is Levy sacrificing at the end of this play? And how does that kind of parallel in some ways the ultimate kind of consequence that we see taking place at the end of this text? Oops. Let's go here, and then we'll talk about the end. This is Levy talking to Sturdivant. He says, "I don't want no $5, Mr. Sturdivant. I want to return them songs like you say." "Well, Levy, like I say, they just aren't the kind of songs we're looking for. Mr. Sturdivant, you asked me to write them songs. Now you don't. Now why didn't you tell me that before when I just give them to you? You told me you was going to let me record them. What's the difference between then and now?" "Well, look, I'll pay for your trouble." "What's the difference, Mr. Sturdivant? That's what I want to know. I had my fellows play your songs, and when I heard them, they just didn't sound like the kind of songs I'm looking for now. You had to hear me play them, Mr. Sturdivant. You ain't heard me play them. That's what's going to make them sound right." "Well, Levy, I don't doubt that really. It's just that, well, I don't think they'd sell like Ma's records, but I'll take them off the hands for you. People's tired of jug band music, Mr. Sturdivant. They want something that's going to excite them. They want something with fire. I don't know what fellows you had playing them songs, but if I could play them, if I set them down in people's lap. Now you told me I could record them. Well, there's nothing I can do about that. Like I say, it's $5 a piece. That's what I'll give you." And he goes on to say, "I'm doing you a favor." I think that's what he says. Okay. Before I go on to the next moment, I want you to think about how this moment, metaphorically, right, comparatively, connects to what happens with his father, right? Think about that. I'm going to give you a little bit. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but I want you to dig into it. Think about how there's some of these parallels here. We have this moment early on in the play where he's talking about his father's experience and how his father smiled in the face of these individuals, and then went back and tried to one up them. But Levy's been trying to practice that the entire time. Levy's been trying to smile in their face, having this other grand plan in mind, but it's not leading to the result he wants. The outcome isn't how he would hope it would be, right? And so with that in mind, think about the end of the play and why that's important. Okay, there's a moment where one of his fellow bandmates steps on his shoes, and Levy responds in a certain way. Okay, I don't want to talk about that if you haven't read it, but he responds in a certain kind of way. Two things. Think about what that stepping on the shoe is a sign of, right? Imagine you just get those brand new Jordans. You're excited about them. You're like, woo, I got these Jordans, right? I'm excited. Let's go. And somebody just comes up and steps on them right away. Think about how you would feel. Think about what that other person is not showing to you in that moment. And then think about how Levy responds to the situation. Think about why that might be important. What is this play saying about the true nature of power and of freedom? Okay. I want to just give you a brief sort of overview of the Harlem Renaissance. Again, I want you to read the section of the Harlem Renaissance in the African American literature overview. Sure. It's a blossoming from like 1918 to 37 of African American culture, particularly in the creative arts and the most influential movement in African American literary history. Embracing literary, musical, theatrical, and visual arts, participants sought to reconceptualize the Negro apart from the white stereotypes that had influenced Black people's relationship to their heritage and to each other. They also sought to break free of Victorian moral values and bourgeoisie shame about aspects of their lives that might, as seen by whites, reinforce racist beliefs. Never dominated by a particular school of thought, but rather characterized by intense debate, the movement laid the groundwork for all layer African American literature and has had an enormous impact on subsequent Black literature and consciousness worldwide. While the Renaissance was not confined to the Harlem district of New York City, Harlem attracted a remarkable concentration of intellect, talent, and served as the symbolic capital of this cultural awakening. So there's a couple of key things that the Harlem Renaissance did, is that it was pushing back against caricatures and stereotypes that were often presented of African Americans in literature and such, right? In fact, although August Wilson and his work takes place long after the Harlem Renaissance, the fact of the matter is that his plays embrace sort of the idea of having agency and ownership over your identity, having a representational identity that seeks to push back and push away from caricatures. And then the other thing the Harlem Renaissance did is it embraced and showed the love within the culture, right? And so keep those things in mind as we go along, right? It was seeking independence in a variety of ways. It was a prolific output that sought independence in a variety of ways. So what I want to do is I want to head over and take a look at some of the poems in this poetic connection, and then make connections back to some of the things that we were looking at. Let's take a look at Maya Angelou first. And I'm not going to read these poems. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some things to think about. So the first poem we have is Still I Rise. Let me just go through. And Caged Bird, okay? Here's a couple of thoughts that I want you to think about. And maybe what I'll do. No, I'll save this. I'll save that comment for the next poem we're going to look at. I'll just read the first sort of stanzas. And I want you to think about how even just these brief moments could be used as a way to examine and reconsider something you noticed in the play, Ma Rainey. In history with your bitter, twisted lies, you may tread me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room, okay? Just that idea of, does my sassiness upset you, right? Obviously, if we look at the title and just the title, we have this idea of Still I Rise, right? So think about, what does it reveal about a person that they encounter all of these things, but they still rise. They find a way to get up time and time and time again. Now take that idea, and what I would want you to do if you choose to write about this is you could take a passage, right? You could take one of these stanzas and think about, how do these lines help me to reconsider, re-understand, reconceptualize what I had been discussing earlier, or understand a moment from the play, right? How can this help me to understand something specific from Ma Rainey? Now, you can make connections to other things that we're looking at, but I think that this could be, for the purposes of what we've been talking about today, I think that would be a good way to go about it. Caged Bird. Let me read a little bit of this. The free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream to the current's end and dips his wings in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied. So he opens up his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with fearful thrill of the things unknown, but longs for still. And his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Now listen, I can keep reading, and probably even as I've read that much, and if you've read this play, you're thinking to yourself, oh man, that relates to this from the play, and this to the play, and this to the play. Again, think about how this notion of freedom and singing in Caged Bird connects to Ma Rainey from Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Think about how this poem can help us to, again, reconsider these questions of power and freedom that we are presented in the text. Okay? Let's take a look at one other thing from the poetic connection, Mother to Son. Again, we have a Harlem Renaissance poem here. We have a couple of Harlem Renaissance poems here. I'm going to read only the first one, and I want you to think about how this could connect to the play as well. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's hard, taxing it, and splinters, and boards turn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time I's been a climbing on, and reaching, landings and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark, where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps, because you find it kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for I still going, honey. I still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. I think there's a couple of different ways to think about mothers and sons in this play. You can think about Ma and her nephew, right? To think about sort of his, think about the message that Langston Hughes is providing here, and think about how it can be used to help us to reconsider the position that Ma takes in having him, having her nephew sing or provide the intro. But you can also think about mother and son in terms of Ma and Levy, right? Levy's had it hard. Ma's had it hard, but Ma keeps going. Levy's making certain decisions where he's going, but he's going in a direction that isn't going to be the most advantageous or beneficial to him, right? So that creates some complications. So again, I love, and one of the things I encourage you to make an attempt at is when you take one text and think about how can it help me to understand this other text. I love the idea of considering overlaps that exist. I'm not going to read this other poem, but I too, is such a powerful text that you can also use not just to make connections to Ma, but to make connections to other things that we have talked about throughout the course of the class, or will talk about throughout the course of this class. Okay, got those. And then we're going to move into essentially the last section that I want to talk about, briefly talking about the lesson and then looking at some moments from Act 1 of Raisin in the Sun. All right, so here's just some, here's the next question that we can kind of work with. How does education influence identity? Clearly, we've looked at some other texts, whether it's the Learning to Read and Write, the Frederick Douglass piece, or even we can look at the idea of education in Ma Rainey, Black Bottom, or we can even look at it in Alice Walker's Everyday Use. Any of these texts, we can think of education not simply as, in the classroom, but like life experiences, okay? So these are some of the guiding questions to think about. Where does the teacher take the children? What store do they go to? How do they feel once they go inside? What are some of the things they observe in the store? What is the lesson of the trip? What do they learn from this experience? Okay. I think again, I know I keep repeating it. It sounds like I'm saying this about everything, but this is a text that students do a great job with as well. There's this idea that they go to this amazing toy store, but as soon as they go in the toy store, when they go inside, they start to feel guilt and shame, like they don't belong, like they don't fit in, that they're not good enough. And the author does a beautiful job of presenting sort of this division that exists when they're on the outside and they're looking through the window, looking inside. It's one sort of experience, right? They're on the outside looking in. When they actually go in, they don't feel like they should be a part of that. So I want you to think about that idea of being on the outside and looking in as we work our way through the rest of the material today and then throughout the rest of this class. What is for Act 1 for this play? What is the family waiting on? What stands out to you about Walter and Beneatha? And what do you notice about the relationships in Act 1? So these are just some additional guiding questions to think about. So I want to look at some of the citations, and again, as I've been doing, just give you some follow-up questions, some follow-up things to think about, and then we'll keep going. All right. So this is in Act 1, Scene 1. Walter says, "This morning I was looking in the mirror and thinking about it. I'm 35 years old. I've been married 11 years, and I got a boy who sleeps in the living room. And all I got to give him is the stories of how rich white people live." Now, I'll say that the page numbers here may not be the page numbers that you'll find in your play. I have various versions of this play, so the page numbers are always a little different. But having said that, think about this feeling that Walter has, right? He's 35 years old, and he sees that his son is sleeping on the couch. He has nothing to give his son. Think about how he feels knowing that he has nothing to give to his son. That is his own. All he can give to them is the stories of how rich white people live. One of the things that I think that, obviously the story gets into is the idea of inheritance. They're waiting on an inheritance. But what is powerful is this idea of inheritance happens in different ways. Inheritance happens through, obviously, like, in the typical way we think of it. But inheritance also happens in other ways. It's stories that are passed down, right? It's experiences and insights that are passed down. Think about how we saw inheritance in different ways. Inheritance happens through, obviously, like, in the typical way we think of it, but inheritance also happens in other ways. It's stories that are passed down, right? It's experiences and insights that are passed down. Think about how we saw inheritance play out in everyday use. Think about how that presented itself in a variety of ways as well. Okay. All right. Now, again, I'm not going to give you all the big moments. I'm not going to give you all the moments, but I am going to give you some key moments. So clearly from Walter, we can see how he's feeling at this particular point in his life. And one of the things that I think is valuable and makes writing about this text easier is to consider the two central characters, Walter and Beneatha, identify their dreams, think about sort of how their experiences are shaping them and forming who they are, and learning a little bit of sort of their values and their beliefs. And here is one that's a really important moment. And I want us to think about what we learn about Beneatha from this moment. Beneatha says, "Mama, you don't understand. It's all a matter of ideas, and God is just one idea I don't accept. It's not important. I'm not going out to be immoral or commit crimes because I don't believe in God. I don't even think about it. It's just that I get tired of him getting credit for all the things the human race achieves. Times understand. It's all a matter of ideas, and God is just one idea I don't accept. It's not important. I'm not going out to be immoral or commit crimes because I don't believe in God. I don't even think about it. It's just that I get tired of him getting credit for all the things the human race achieves through its own stubborn effort. There simply is no blasted God. There's only man, and it is he who makes miracles." Mama absorbs the speech, studies her daughter, and rises slowly and crosses to Beneatha and slaps her powerfully across the face. After, there's only silence, and the daughter drops her eyes from her mother's face, and Mama is very tall before her. And then Mama says, "Now you say after me, in my mama's house. In my mother's house, there is still a God." And Beneatha says, "In my mother's house, there is still God." I wouldn't want you to cite this entire thing in an essay or in a close reading response, but you can take parts of it. And having the stage direction is really, really vital, really important. Maybe you know somebody, like an elder in your life, like your parent, grandparent, somebody, right, that is very, very religious. And imagine one day you went over to their house, just kind of hanging out, and at some point you said, "You know what? There is no God," right? This is what we call choosing violence, right? She is choosing violence in this moment. She is escalating things quickly. But what does it reveal about? But listen, Beneatha knows her grandmother, knows her mother, right? Knows her. There's no confusion here. There's no confusion here. She knows her. She knows her from all those trips to church. She knows her from all the time they spent there, all that, right? She knows how this is going to land. There's not a scenario where Beneatha says this and Mama's like, "You got some good points. You're right." It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, right? So think about, because she knows it and she does it anyway. What is she not showing for her mother, right? What is she not showing for her mother? And then after the slap, when Beneatha says, "In my mother's house, there is still a God," think about now how she's behaving, right? But in addition to what she's not showing her mother, think about how else she is feeling, or what else she's demonstrating about herself, right? Both positive and negative. There are some definite positive things that we can say about Beneatha in this moment, right? Definitely some positive things. And even in this moment, think about the significance of Beneatha's name, beneath, right? To be beneath, to be less than. And in this back and forth discussion, she is trying to assert that she is tired of being beneath God, that she wants some acknowledgement and recognition for the things she does, right? So think about how she feels that someone else, something else is getting the recognition that she feels that she should be getting. Okay, let's keep going. I know these videos are long, but I'm just trying to help, guys. All right, so we have this moment pretty early in the play. Travis needs some money, right? So Travis says, "Mama, could I please go carry groceries, honey? It's starting to get cold evenings." What is it he wants to do? Go carry groceries after school at the supermarket. Well, then go. I have to. She won't give me the 50 cents. And he's looking at his wife only, right? Why not? Because we don't have it. What you tell the boy things like that for? Reaching into his pants with a rather important gesture. "Here, son." He hands the boy the coin, but his eyes are directed to his wife's. "Thanks, Daddy." Without even looking at his son, still staring hard at his wife. In fact, here's another 50 cents. Buy yourself some fruit today, or take a taxi cab to school or something, right? Think about what Walter is trying to establish in this moment with his wife, right? His son needs money. Son says, "We don't have the money." And Walter looks at his wife dead in the eyes and is just giving his son the money, just passing it, right? What does Walter want to convey to his wife? What does Walter want to establish to his son here, right? How does he want to be seen by both of these individuals? And it's something different. It's not the same for both of them. Think about how he wants to be seen by both of these people, right? That he loves so much. Okay. This is near the end. This is the very end of the first act, I think. It's close to the end of the first act. Walter says, you ain't looked at it, and you don't aim to have to speak on it. You ain't even looked at it, and you have decided crumpling the papers. Well, you tell that to my boy tonight. We have to put him to sleep on the living room couch. Yeah, and you tell it to my wife, Mama, tomorrow, when she has to go out here to look after somebody else's kids. And tell it to me, Mama, every time you need a new pair of curtains, I have to watch you go out and work in somebody's kitchen. Yeah, you tell me then. Think about how Walter is trying to make his mother feel in this moment, right? Think about, right, he's crumpling up his papers, this plan that he has. Again, read the play so you understand what that's talking about. The mom isn't interested in it. Think about how he responds, right? He is going for the jugular here when he says, well, you think about that when your grandbaby's sleeping on the couch tonight, right? How is he trying to make his mother feel? And what is that revealing about Walter in this moment? And this is a little bit further in the play. And one of the things that's true about this play is that there will be a couple of instances, 3, I think, total, this being one of them, where Walter is describing the future, talking about the future. Beneath it does too, so pay attention to that. And Walter says, sometimes it's like I can see the future stretched out in front of me, just plain as day. The future, Mama, hanging over there at the edge of my days, just waiting for me. A big, looming, blank space full of nothing, just waiting for me. Part of the way that I would want you to think about this is to break this up, right? Again, he's talking about his future. Think about this from a positive perspective and think about this from a negative perspective. A big looming, think about something that's big and looming. Think about how that might cause a person to feel. Think about what that could create, what that could produce in an individual, how that might make them, what might you think if you looked outside and there was something that was big and looming, right? Like recently, the clouds have been big and looming. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going out there right now. Let's get out of the storm first. A blank space, right? Think about a blank space. Think about it positively and negatively. Think about what it gives the person a chance for, right? Think about everything represented positively about a blank space, right? If you think about a painter, right? They look at their canvas, they have a blank space. Think about what opportunity that gives to them. But also, think about this idea of the negative, right? We have all had that idea of opening up a Word document, a Google document, and seeing that blank looming space and thinking, man, I got to fill this up with some words. Think about how that may make a person feel to just see that looming blank space. And imagine for a moment that you saw your future as full of nothing, right? This nothingness. How might that make you feel? What would that do to you? So, and this transitions into the next thing, close reading response reminders, okay? And the idea is simply this. Pick a text from the first 2 weeks. Avoid the double consciousness and the TED Talk on the value of multicultural lit. Pick one of the questions, select 2 citations, and create a thesis that follows what I discussed, and write the paragraph where you develop your observations to the text, to the citations from the text. Okay? And I'll write this here. Please make sure you refer to the sample paragraph that I provided in the slides earlier this week. Okay? So I want to do some house cleaning here, and I want to take a look at when that is due. Okay? Rough draft is due the 17th. So you have a few days to get that rough draft done. I haven't checked yet. I'll be sure to check in a few minutes, but if you haven't had a chance to, if you have had a chance to submit it, I'll get you feedback in the next couple of days, okay? Because I want to make sure you're good with that. But follow the video that I posted earlier this week, and you will be right where you need to be, okay? Now, there's one last thing that I want to do, or I need to do. I need to set up Elliot a Soldier's Fugue, but I want to give you the goal for the weekend and what will be recorded next meeting, probably on Monday, okay? So make sure you complete 2 discussions for this week of Lit 3 for week 2. I don't know why I said for Lit 3. Of course, it's Lit 3. By anytime on Sunday. Read the play Elliot, A Soldier's Fugue. Complete a rough draft of the close reading response based on something we have covered during the first 2 weeks. And the next recording will focus on Elliot, the Pride text in week 3. And I might start it off by discussing some of the key moments from the end of Raising the Sun, but make sure that you finish that play on your own so that you can jump into those respective discussions. Okay, so let's go over here to Elliot. And again, near the end of week 2, you see I have an introduction to Latino literature, the Latinx literature. That handout is the same function as the African American handout, literature handout. It gives a broad overview. You can pull things from it for a future essay. You can kind of just browse over it from now. It is a resource for you. But this is the handout that I want to kind of go over because it's what you're going to need as you head into week 3. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. While I want you to, on your own, read through all this, right? It gives the setup for Elliot. It gives the the inspiration and success, the importance of stories from a biography and so forth. What I want to do is I want to lead into it this way. One is she wrote the book for In the Heights with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and this play is part of a trilogy of plays. You're reading the first one, okay? And it's written here, but I'll say it out loud. A few years ago, I mean, at this point, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago at this point. I don't know, I've lost all track of time. But I saw a production of this, and when you went inside, this was at the not the Mark Taper, the Kirk Douglas out in like Culver City. Okay, beautiful small theater. And when you go in, they had these 2 bulletin boards, right? And you could write down little notes on it, and you could put it like a you could tack it onto the board, right? They have these 2 questions. It says, what is something that you wish your family had told you? What is something that you wish you had told your family? Right? And so you could look over this information that's being provided there, and it's incredibly, therapeutic, right? You can see people like just purging these feelings of things that they wish they had known and other things that they had wished they had been told. And so, or wish they had told, I should say, right? And so I want you to think about these, keep these questions in mind before you start reading this play. And I'm not going to ask you anybody to share, right? Because that's secret, that's private. That's I'll never put anybody on the spot in that way. But what I will say is this: having that idea in mind will help you to understand Elliot in this play. Okay, so this is a play that features 3 generations of war vets. Okay, grandfather, father, and son. And Elliot's mother also served. What I would want you to do, let me do some of this. Pay attention to the different wars that these different generations serve in, and what stands out to you about their experiences. Okay, that's one thing. Let me keep reading. I'll add some more stuff there. Here are some things to consider as you read, and I put one of them in bold. How do the experiences in war across the generations compare and contrast? How does war shape identity? Right. So this is one of the questions that you can use for the second close reading response, or even the first essay once we get to it. How do they turn their experiences more? How do they make their experiences more bearable? Consider each of these generations served, and what was the war, and what would be beneficial about serving. Meaning, why did they? What was the reason that they served, and what were they hoping to get from it? What was the reason that they served, and what were they hoping to get from it? I'm actually going to do it this way. Okay. Now, I will say this. Before I even read this last part, I want you guys to also read these 2 other texts. A poem, a short text. I want you to consider how those readings can be used to connect to a specific moment in the play. So carefully consider how something specific from those texts connects to something specific from the play, right? And then we have the link to the play right here for Elliot. You might need to rotate it around, but I want to show you guys something. This is really important. Okay. It's not a long play. It's short, but I want to show you visually something. Actually, I can't. It doesn't really show well like this. Okay, never mind. I want you to think about it in this way. And well, let me read this part. I think this part is going to be the easiest way to explore it. Let me copy this too, just so you read it twice. And I promise you, this is the end of this video. I'm wrapping it up. Okay. So each of the sections in this play reflect a memory, okay? So you know how when you dream and you wake up, you get a piece of something. You don't recall everything. This is how I need you to approach this play. I don't want you to worry about a connected story, but these are just reflections. The play breaks up these reflections in sections titled Fugue or Prelude. And I want you to consider what this moment in time offers to us and how it helps us to understand the characters and issues in the play. Lastly, sometimes characters speak at the same time. This doesn't mean that they are in the room together. Think of it like when you send a text to somebody. You might be rereading the text while they are also reading it. You are experiencing the same thing, but you are in different places at different times, right? As you read, I want you to focus on their experiences reveal about them. Identify 3 to 4 citations per character that you feel might give us insight into this character and his or her experiences. For the other text, I want you to underline key details that you think are important about them. Take your time with the reading and remember you have until Monday to complete it. So keep that in mind, right? Each section of this play focuses on a different memory. Think about what are we learning from that moment in the memory. That idea of overlapping memories is such an important thing. Because keep in mind, we're looking at 3 generations of war vets. So sometimes what this play does is it will have one war vet and their experience, right? Maybe Elliot and the father doing the same thing, but at his time, in his war, right? So you'll have these moments parallel. And we need to think about why these parallel moments are valuable to us. What are they revealing? To go with the other sort of analogy here, maybe you send a text to somebody, right? And you're rereading it. You're not writing it anymore, but you are rereading it. And then you see those 3 dots come up. Well, they're rereading what you wrote and they're typing their thing. It's not happening at the same time. It's not like a back and forth that is happening in the same room at the same time. But what we get in this play is an ability to hear that back and forth, right? So if you hear somebody, you know, if you ever have written a letter to somebody, probably nobody has, but an email maybe to somebody, sometimes when you write, you say that thing out loud, right? You say those words out loud. And when the person gets it, they're going to be reading those words, right? Whether out loud or in their head. So again, the message may carry over, but it's not a moment that's happening at the same time. Most of the overlaps in conversation happen to help us to understand why these similar experiences are important, right? I think the only other thing that I want to give you a heads up on is there are moments when we have sort of an outside observer, kind of a chorus speaking through one of the characters as a way to help us to understand the issue and situation of Elliot, right? You can just think of that as sort of an omniscient, like an all-seeing person who is trying to help us to understand this character. This was a play that won or was nominated for the Pulitzer, right? The highest award you can get. It came in second. In the second in the series, Water by the Spoonful, won the Pulitzer and is such a powerful continuation of what we did in this play. Okay. I look forward to talking to you about it I'm not going to give you access to it quite yet, but next week I'll give you access to some stage photos from the play so you can get a sense of what the stage looked like. And I will kind of talk you through some of what we see presented there and reflect back on my own experiences watching it. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. I appreciate you guys. I'm thankful for you guys. I hope you've gained something from this. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk with you soon. Okay? I'll be in Zoom tomorrow from all day from 9 to 1. Have a great day. Be safe out there. Take care.